Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am Christine Dixon of The Ordinary Sacred, and this is the next video in my teaching series called IFS Basics. And it's basically my IFS 101 course in little small videos for YouTube. And today I'm excited because we're going to talk about the self, the capital S self, and how you recognize it in yourself and in others, and how you can not cultivate it because it's already there. It is the sun behind the clouds, but how you can kind of access the warmth of that sun and really tap into it. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. And I'm going to go over what's been called, let me make myself bigger so you can see me. Okay. I'm going to go over the 8 C's of self that Richard Schwartz recognized when he first worked with his clients, and recognized that when they're agitated, burdened, kind of angst, fearful parts relaxed, that this is what always emerged in every single client, no matter what extent of trauma they had. And so he's come up with these 8 C's. There's also 5 P's, which I'm going to tell you about. But the self is not confined to these C and P words. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But what IFS asserts, and what has been my experience with myself, with my clients, with every human being, is that every person has a capital S self at their core. Now, some people come to me and they say, I don't think I have a self. I think I'm the only person in the world who doesn't. I can't access it. It's nowhere to be found. And I feel such empathy and compassion for those people. I have felt like that many times in my life. And what that means is simply that you have so many protective parts that have had to come online and come in to protect you, usually as a child, but maybe even continuing through your life, if you've had abuse or trauma or things like that. And they are working so, so hard for you that they're essentially like the clouds that are eclipsing the sun. But if you can bring just the tiniest mustard seed of, which is a tiny, tiny, tiny seed, amount of self energy toward those protectors, to see them, to recognize them, to appreciate them, they'll begin relaxing and making a little more and more and more room for self. So there is this thing that Dick Schwartz calls the virtuous cycle. Instead of the toilet bowl of shame, or, the vicious cycles that happen with our parts, it's this beautiful virtuous cycle where we bring this tiny, tiny bit of self energy to any one of our parts. It relaxes and makes a little more space, and then gradually we have more and more self energy to give to our most distressed parts. Now, the self is the healing entity in internal family systems, which is so refreshing, so, so refreshing to me, because so many other modalities really see the healing as coming from outside of us, right? From some other person that we have to rely on, or even some uh, belief system or religion or spirituality or something like that. Now, IFS is a very spiritual uh, modality, and it is a modality, but as Dick Schwartz says in You Are the One You've Been Waiting For, you are your own primary caregiver, and the healing resource is inside of you. You don't have to go looking outside of you or figure things out. It's just about coming back to that, remembering that, reconnecting to who you are at your core. And so you have this resource inside of you 24/7 that knows you and all your parts intimately. So it's not like, a person outside of you that can't be there for you 24/7 and can't possibly know every intimate detail about you. But this core of you can do that. Um, so the 8C qualities, I will go over them, are curious, compassionate, calm, clear, confident, courageous, creative, and connected. And when I was first learning IFS, it really did serve me to memorize these. And the way that I memorize them is I actually organize them in two groups of four, and then I break those up into two groups of two. So I remember two together: curious and compassionate, calm and clear, confident, courageous, creative, connected. And my brain helps me remember them. I can kind of see it, but it chunks them and it helps me remember what they are, because in times when we are really blended with protective parts or maybe exile parts, it can be really difficult to connect to this. You can also, if you want to, make a little poster or write a little post-it note with these words on it, put it on your mirror, and you can just be reminded and come to it and connect to it. Now, I didn't put it here, but I'm going to tell you the 5 Ps of self as well, if you want to write them down. And these are sometimes called the 5 Ps of self leadership. They are play, um, yes, persistence, perspective, presence, and patience. So those are the 5 Ps of self. Now, someone wrote me a note just recently and was talking about how their system kind of just resisted or didn't kind of connect or resonate so much with the 8 Cs and even the 5 Ps, and they were really struggling. And what I often tell people is, do not get attached to these words. If they don't resonate with your system, that is completely fine. You might have other words that are not, don't start with C or P. Oh, and there's another C that I like, which is centered, like that kind of grounded, centered feeling. But being in self is a feeling state. And you can describe it with things like freedom, lightness, wisdom, equanimity, groundedness, delight, unconditional love. These are words that also describe the state of being in self. And so, what I would encourage you to do is to just explore what it feels like for you when you feel secure. So, sometimes the way that I'll get people to kind of really experience what it feels like to be in self is that while self is unconditionally loving, the way that my system enters into self is for my insecure parts to feel secure and be able to relax. So I get into self when I understand, sometimes it's an experiment at first, but that I and all my parts are unconditionally loved. And so there are 3 things that people who have experienced, let me stop sharing so you can see me here. There are 3 things that people who've experienced near-death experiences report repeatedly, that they experience this feeling of unconditional love. Often there's a light involved, a bright light, but it's just like this warmth and this unconditional love that is indescribable in human words, that they have not experienced on the earth. And they know 3 things through that loving presence: that they are unconditionally loved, that they cannot get it wrong, and there is nothing to fear. So, again, there's this really strong sense of peace and security and clarity around the fact that there's nothing to fear and I cannot get it wrong, right? There's no failure, there's only feedback. And this is like a simulation of a game. And if I make a mistake, it's okay, right? There's no shame whatsoever. There's no scolding, no punishment, no vengeance, none of that. And so when they know this in their bones because they've just experienced it, when they come back into their bodies on the earth, um, they can still slip into their parts that. So I believe that our protective parts, who basically are disconnected from that knowing, that they are what we need to survive in these bodies on this planet. We need to have fear. We need to have a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response in order to stay alive in these bodies. And so our parts are not bad at all, but they kind of have a little bit of amnesia about the truth, the ultimate truth, even beyond these bodies on this planet, that there really is nothing to fear in the big picture. We really cannot get it wrong. And we're held in unconditional love. So our parts can also hold shame, right? Which is counter to that because we need to survive and conform and be accepted in our culture. And shame keeps us in line there so that we can survive in our bodies physically on this planet. But as our parts feel more and more secure, they can connect to this knowing. So often, what I'll propose to people and their parts and their system is just to do an experiment where, and you can do this right now if you would like, where you just imagine, just pretend. I just tell the parts it's okay to pretend sometimes. Um, and you might be sitting in a chair or lying on a bed or on the floor. Take a breath. Feel your body in this space. Feel the weight of your body, gravity pulling down on your shoulders, your jaw. Notice your breath and imagine that there is an orb of light all around you. It's like a encapsulating you, and it can be whatever color comes to you that feels soothing and loving. And then as you are encapsulated by this orb of warm or cool light, whatever feels better to you, you can rest. There's nothing you have to do to prove yourself. There's nothing you could say, no flaw or past failure that you could admit that would take this love away from you. This orb is full of just unconditional love and positive regard for you. And in this space, just for a few minutes, you don't have to worry about pleasing anybody, about putting on any kind of front of being anything other than your completely authentic self. You can take a sigh of relief. You can express your deepest, darkest secrets, your most vengeful, angry thoughts, any and everything, and you will be met with nothing but love and delight. And if you can just bask in this, it can just be a thought experiment. Just pretend that it's true and see what happens to your body, to your mind in this safe orb of space. And this is something that I learned um, from another teacher. And like they said, it was actually Joe Dispenza. And I love some things he teaches, and other things are not as resonant with me, but I loved this one. And one thing he says is, you can call this orb of unconditional love God if you'd like, but if you have any kind of notions of God that include shame, judgment, punishment, please absolutely do not call this God. So for me, my experience of God, or what I call capital L love, is this. This is the knowing that I'm unconditionally loved. I cannot get it wrong. There is nothing to fear. And so in this safe space, that is my connection and access to God, aka love, aka all capital self. And it isn't through connecting to this that my system feels so relaxed and secure, that my parts relax enough to allow my own localized self, what might be called the image of God in me, um, the divine essence within me, the healing resource of self. It makes more room for that to emerge within me. And then that localized self that knows all of my history and everything about my parts can be the loving source that says to each of my distressed parts, I love you. You cannot get it wrong. There is nothing to fear. I am here with you. You are not alone. How can I help you? What do you need? So that's a little experiment that I like to do, um, to kind of help people access their own self energy. And I am going to tell you one more thing. I'm going to share my screen again, because you can't have too many ways to connect to self, because that really is um, the key, I think, to being able to do, especially doing IFS in your own system, is the your ability to connect to your own self energy with which to give loving attention to your distressed parts. We're never trying to get rid of the distressed parts. We're trying to bring together the self and the parts. And so we do need to have some kind of access to self. So sometimes the first step is actually getting curious about and that's an aspect of self, but about the parts who block you from self energy. It may not have been safe for you to show curiosity as a child, or creativity or confidence, right? And so there might be parts who legitimately fear you being in self. And so you can kind of meet their concerns and propose little experiments. What if you let me try it just for a minute or 10 seconds, right? So I have several videos about this, but I'm just going to go over it really quickly with you. Um, because it is a truly powerful exercise to help you understand what it feels like in your body to be in self versus being blended with a burdened part. Okay. So what I want to encourage you to do, and you can do that, you can pause this video and do it with each one, or you can write down the the 8 C's and the 5 P's and try it gradually in little sittings, um, but it's a really worthwhile exercise. So what you do is you take each of these words. So let's start with curious. And you try to think of a moment in your life where you genuinely felt curious. It might be like a topic that really fascinated you, right? Curiosity is like it pulls you in and you're like, oh, that's so fascinating. It might have been when you were 4 years old and you were asking questions, right? All the whys. Why does that happen? Oh my goodness, right? It really has this attitude of that's so interesting. I want to learn about it. And it might be a person in front of you that was fascinating to you, or something in nature, right? But think of a specific moment when you felt curious, and you can close your eyes, you can go back into that moment and really feel it in your body. What does it feel like to be curious? Because it's sometimes intangible. You can describe it like I'm moving forward, my eyes are lighting up or wide, but there's also a feeling in my heart. There's an open-heartedness, um, an excitement, a fascination. It's hard to describe in words. So really feel that in your body. Once you have that anchored, okay, and you can even imagine it, on one side of your body. And then on the other side, you're going to take something that's the opposite of curious. Now, I think of the opposite of curious as judgmental because it's like you're closed off. You feel like you know everything that you need to know about this. It might be certainty, but it's like you're closed. You have made your judgment about this thing. There's nothing for you to learn. You don't want to know about it, right? And so think of a time when you felt that. It might be like a political position and someone else has this position and you're just like, mm-mm, you are bad. Get away from me. I do not want to hear you, right? So you don't feel curious. You don't feel open. You feel closed, right? Again, this is not bad. This is a protective part of you that has very good intention for closing you off to something it feels is harmful. But really feel how it feels in your body. Again, bring yourself into that moment. I notice my brow furrowing, my teeth gritting, like this rigidity of no, kind of like setting a boundary, right? There's tension in my body. I'm using energy to hold, right? Okay, so I'm feeling that feeling state in my body. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to toggle back and forth between the curiosity and the certainty, closed offness, right? So I'm curious, I'm closed, I'm open and curious and fascinated, I'm closed off, right? You can hear the difference in my voice. And so what I'm doing is I'm toggling between the two so that I can feel the difference. Ah, mm, ah, mm. Okay, now, self-leadership is not that I need to be curious all the time and shut out the closed one because, see, that's bringing closed energy to the closed one. What brings healing is bringing curiosity to the closed one. So I've got the closed energy, and the curious one, which is myself, comes to that one and says, I'm so curious about you. Why are you closed off? What happened to you? I know you make sense. Um, Tell me about it. If you're closed off and you're certain, it must be for a good reason. You are protecting yourself for another part, and I am curious about you. So you see how the curiosity meets the closed off, judgmental certain one and learns about why it makes sense. So I'm not going to go through all of the others, but you can, let's say confidence, right? When you felt confident, your head was high, your shoulders were back, you had a straight spine, and you had a voice, and you were confident in a situation versus you were small and shamed and embarrassed and feeling insecure, no voice, hunched over, right? Confidence, shamed. Confidence, shamed. Now you can confidently go to the one who feels shamed and say, I'm here with you. I can stand with you. I believe in you. And I'll hold your hand and believe in you until you can believe in yourself. But I'm here with you. And I know that if you feel shamed and small, you've had to do that for a reason. But I'm going to stand with you, right? And then you can bring all the other C's, curiosity and compassion and calm and clarity to that one as well. So that's an exercise. Take the C quality or the P quality or any other self quality and it kind of its opposite. Toggle back and forth between very specific memories of each. Feel it in your body, back and forth, and then bring it together. So I hope you appreciate that exercise as well. Um, if you have any other exercises that help you access yourself, especially in moments when you are very overwhelmed by parts, kind of just gaining that little tiny mustard seed of self, um, or you have any questions from the things I've talked about, please leave them in the comments below.